Hello beauties, I hope you're doing amazing. Today we're going to talk about 5 palettes that released in 2023 that remind me of Valentine's Day. If that sounds good to you, let's get into the video. I'm also going to give you a bonus palette that is still available but didn't release last year. It has a very Valentine's appropriate color story. If you have it, you should use it. Let's get started. The first palette is a palette that I've mentioned as a very Valentine's appropriate palette in this channel. In fact, I even have a video where I made eye looks with this palette. And I mentioned in that video that I'm going to whip this palette out during Valentine's Day. And that is this beauty. This is Gourmand Girls Warriors Wear Pink. Beauties, I think in the video where I talked about the 18 Valentine's appropriate palettes that I created last year, and I'll put that video here if you want to watch it. That video is very applicable to this year as well because a lot of those palettes are still available. I mentioned in that video that I see Valentine's appropriate palettes as sort of two kind of color stories. You either have very romantic-y color story or you have sort of anti-Valentine, sort of goth Valentine color story. You know, since then I've actually kind of changed my mind. I think there's more than that. I think there is the romantic, soft glam kind of look, which is sort of bridal, very neutral. Then you have sort of a Barbie Valentine, which is very pink, like the color of the shirt that I'm wearing, or maybe even more pink, which kind of reminds me of the merchandise or the marketing of Valentine's Day. And then you have what I mentioned last year, which is sort of very goth, anti-Valentine sort of a look, which might be the eye look that I created today. And by the way, beauties, if you're like this eye look, I actually used one of the palettes we're going to talk about a little later in combination with one of the singles that I mentioned in the video that I created about Valentine's Day singles. I'll put that video also on the screen if you're interested in watching that video. I actually videoed this look that's going to be released as a short. It might already be available on my channel. If it's not, it's going to be available before Valentine's Day. But as I mentioned, the third category is sort of a gothy Valentine type of look. And then there's a fourth category, which is do as you want kind of look. You might want to do a little bit of freestyle, mixing greens and pinks to do a Valentine's look. It's not traditional Valentine look, but it's definitely a step out of the box. So considering those categorizations, this palette can give you that soft glam type of look with these neutral colors, as well as the very Barbie, very Valentine's pink kind of a look with some of these colors, as well as the goth sort of Valentine look. You can mix the black, you can use some of this brown to make kind of an eye look similar to what I'm wearing today. And even arguably you can kind of step out of the box with this greeny color, although I think in the video that I used this color, it's not exactly as green as it might look in the pan, but you can definitely use it to kind of step out of the box of just looking pink or red. The second palette I want to talk about is Fantasia from Divina. Of the categorizations that I mentioned, with this palette you can definitely do the soft glam look using some of these sort of a softer toned, more neutrally colors. You can definitely do the traditional pink Valentine look with some of these purples and pinks. And you can also take a step away from Valentine and do a more variety and diverse kind of Valentine look, incorporating some of these greeny, duochromy, maybe even multichromy colors. Depending on your skin tone, you might even be able to do a gothy type of a look if these two matte colors look dark on your skin tone. The next palette that I thought is very appropriate for Valentine's Day and kind of has a similar flair to Fantasia from Divina is Lavender Skies from Gloss Gods. The color story in this palette is very Valentine's appropriate when we think about traditional Valentine. And you can make a variation of purple and pink look, which are obviously very appropriate for Valentine's Day, but less so neutrally type of looks. I can't really imagine you being able to make gothy looks with this. But because it's a very traditional Valentine, definitely wanted to talk about it because if that's your type of color story, this is a great palette for that. And you could, with this yellow, take a step out of the box and make kind of a different look as well that incorporates beyond just using purples and pinks. I do have a look with some of these palettes. I'll try to tag all the videos where I do looks with these palettes on the screen just in case you're curious to know what kind of looks you can make with them. The next palette we're going to talk about, beauties, is Rich Romance from Glaminatrix. When you look at this palette, you know exactly why this is a Valentine's-y palette. I mean, it even has romance in the name. You have your neutrals, you have your purples and pinks, and then you also have some other colors if you want to take a step outside of just using traditional purples and pinks type of a Valentine look. You can make some sort of a smoky, gothy type of a look with these matte shades. You have these three dark colors, and of course, depending on your skin tone, you might even be able to use that shade as a dark tone to make smoky type of a Valentine's-y look. Yeah, this palette is absolutely the epitome of Valentine. We're gonna get to the last palette in a minute, and you all might be able to guess my last palette because we've talked about it in some of my videos. But before we get into that, I want to talk about this bonus palette, which is a palette that didn't release last year, but is still available and is pretty reasonably priced. And in fact, I used it in my last to buy or not to buy. Yes, beauties, we're talking about Berry's palette from Beauty Bay. Do I need to say a lot? I feel like this color story is definitely the traditional color story of Valentine's. You have the berries, the pinks, the reds. Need I say more? Separate from the traditional pink looks you can make with it, you can definitely even make smoky types of looks, sort of a red smoky, red gothy type of looks with some of these darker mattes. And beauties, my last palette, which was actually one of my favorite palettes of 2023, is Chucky. And this is the palette that I used in conjunction with a single from Terra Moons to make this look. If you watched my singles video, you know which single I've used from Terra Moons. Glamlight released this palette as their Valentine's palette last year. So going to the categories we talked about, obviously when you see this palette, this looks like you can make a lot of gothy type of looks with it and smoky types of looks with it. But separate from those, you can also make more soft glam types of looks with it. You might not guess that, but you can use colors in the bottom row for those kinds of looks. I've definitely even used this palette to make all matte looks that I very much enjoyed that were not super dark. I'm gonna try to find and tag all the different looks that I've made with this palette in this channel in the description box below if you kind of want to see what kind of looks you can make with this palette. And you can also make very red Valentine's-y look using some of these red shades. This palette has a lot of reds and even kind of pinks. So although it might not look it, you can definitely make a variety of looks with this palette. And beauties, with that we come to the end of this video. If I did not mention any of the palettes you had in mind, write the palette to me below. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I have another video where I talk about 18 Valentine's appropriate palettes. That video is going to be recommended to you at the end of this video if that is what you're looking for. Have an amazing day, and until next time, bye.